Becky and her husband, Dan, conquer a sheer cliff. The girl is nervous, but the guy supports her to make a risky jump. Dan catches Becky in his arms, and they pause for a kiss. Their friend Hunter has already climbed higher and urges them not to lag behind. Dan reaches the next point where a safety device needs to be secured, but suddenly a bird flies out of the crack in the rock, throwing him backward. He falls down. The device attached to a crack below stops his fall. The spouses are connected by one rope to stop the partner's fall in such a case. However, the length of the rope is not enough for the guy to reach the wall and grab onto the ledge. He asks Becky to unhook the rope so he can hang on the ring alone and reach the cliff. She does it, but the device can't withstand the load and comes out of the crack. Dan falls to his death. Almost a year later, Becky continues to mourn. She sits in a bar again, listening to her husband's voice. Dan's ashes still lie in a box at her home. Becky's father, James, can't stand to see his daughter spiral down and confronts her outside the bar. The drunk, Becky is not pleased to see him and sends him away. James advises her not to idealize the guy as a saintly martyr. It's evident that he's not trying to reach his daughter for the first time, but the gap between them only widens. The man prevents Becky from getting behind the wheel, and she walks home instead. Things get even worse for the girl there, and she discovers that Dan's voicemail has been permanently disabled. Becky won't be able to hear his voice anymore, and she starts mixing pills with alcohol. Her actions are interrupted by a call from Hunter, who soon appears at the doorstep. Over the year, the girl has created a popular blog where she shares travel stories and performs various daring stunts. She reveals that Becky's father recently called her, asking for help to pull Becky out of depression. For this, Hunter came up with nothing better than to climb one of the tallest TV towers in the country and scatter Dan's ashes from its top. On the day of the tragedy, Becky panics about heights and quit rock climbing. The girl refuses decisively, but her friend assures her that she needs to overcome this fear to let go of the past and move on. In the morning, Becky agrees, remembering Dan's advice not to be afraid to live if you're afraid to die. Hunter is very encouraging, so they head into the desert. On the way, at a small diner, Becky asks the waitress to charge her phone, but the service turns out to be paid. Hunter demonstrates a life hack. You can replace the socket by connecting the plug to a regular light bulb holder. The TV tower is not marked on the maps, and the waitress points to a flickering red dot high in the sky. Although the tower is no longer in use and is scheduled for demolition next year, the signal is necessary to prevent pilots and planes from crashing into it. Hunter can't wait to conquer this peak and document the ascent in her blow. Besides, it will bring her money. On the way, they spend the night in a motel nearby where Becky dreams that Dan is still alive and hugging her. The dream quickly turns into a nightmare, and the girl jolts awake. She gets into the car with Hunter, who is simultaneously driving and recording a video. She gets distracted from the road and almost swerves onto the highway, where a truck is approaching. The truck passes just a meter from their hood, and they decide to postpone the blog recording. The girls reach the tower, which is fenced off with a sign that reads, "Dangerous for life." They have to leave the car here and walk 2 kilometers. Becky is worried that they have too little water for the journey through the desert, and there is no food at all. However, Hunter brought quadcopters and a selfie stick, reassuring her with the presence of insurance and bandages. On the way to the tower, vultures feed on the carcass of an animal. Hunter posts a photo online with the caption, "Time for a snack and the fittest survives." Soon they reach their goal, and Becky feels dizzy from the height of the structure. The memory of the tragedy also haunts her. Hunter promises to be there for her and support her. She boldly moves upward, and Becky has to pull herself together. They overcome, step by step, but the rusty structure starts to wobble. One of the steps breaks off just as Becky grabs it with her hand. Halfway behind, and still 300 meters ahead, Hunter climbs onto a safety point, and the girls reach the first platforms. Ahead of them are 60 meters along the external ladder, which seems even more dangerous and fragile. Each step becomes more difficult for Becky. She trembles with fear. For Hunter, her friend's reaction is a sign that her plan is working. She is sure that Becky will feel better once she overcomes her panic. They squeeze through satellite dishes that block the way, and Hunter even starts shaking the ladder to cheer up her friend. As a result, the structure starts losing its last bolts, but the girls manage to reach the top without incident. Hunter takes out a drone and records more content while she can. She hangs on the edge of the abyss and asks the shocked Becky to capture this madness. Hunter doesn't relent until Becky repeats the risky stunt. The girl has decided to follow her friend to the end and also plays with death. They remember Dan and scatter his ashes into the wind. Both girls cry bitterly for their close friend and lover. Evening approaches, and it's time to descend. Becky is the first to descend with the platform, but after a couple of steps, the entire ladder structure finally detaches from the tower. She falls down and hangs only by the safety device, just like Dan before his death. Hunter saves her, managing to hold onto the top. However, the ladder continues to collapse like a house of cards, and the whole structure falls down. Hunter uses a pole as a lever and pulls her friend up. They laugh in relief and shock but quickly realize that now they have no way to descend. There is only one rope and its length is not enough to reach the next platform. Calling for help is not an option because their phones have no signal. Moreover, during the fall, Becky lost her backpack with water and the drone. Now it lies on a satellite dish below. In the emergency box on the tower designed for such situations, the girls find binoculars and a signal gun with one shot. Hunter notices that her friend has a wound on her leg and applies a tourniquet. Becky says the pain isn't too bad yet. For now, their plan is just to wait since someone should have heard the noise from the ladder falling. After a few hours, they start recording a video blog to pass the time. "If you fall, you'll still be famous. The girl who died for a selfie," says Hunter. Becky asks Hunter to be more sincere and come out of character. She reveals that the reason she started the video blog was Dan's death. Soon, the girls spot a van parked not far from the tower, but it seems abandoned. Hunter suspects that the cell phones caught a signal at a lower altitude. To finish sending messages, they try to lower the phone on a rope as much as possible. It doesn't work. Hunter descends lower on the remaining part of the ladder and hangs by one hand. Their efforts are in vain, so the girls decide to drop the phone down. To prevent it from breaking, they wrap it in Hunter's bra and sock and tuck it into a sneaker. In this form, it reaches the ground, but the result remains unknown. Becky notices a tattoo on Hunter's leg related to Dan. At the same time, Hunter sees a man with a dog walking near the tower. The girls shout and throw shoes to get his attention, but nothing works. They decide to save the signal flare until it gets dark. Later, out of boredom, Becky watches old videos on her phone. She sees Hunter jealously watching her during their wedding with Dan. At that moment, Hunter asks her to shoot the signal flare, and two men in the van notice that the girls are stuck on the tower. They approach the fence and see Hunter's car, but instead of helping the girls, they decide to steal their car. The friends are in complete despair. They spend the nights on the tower under the flickering of the red light and take turns staying awake to avoid falling. Becky's wound starts to hurt. Finally, she asks her friend about the tattoo, and Hunter tearfully admits to having had an affair with Dan. For 4 months, they were secretly seeing each other behind Becky's back, but Hunter ended the relationship despite still loving the man. After his death, she couldn't support her friend because she couldn't be completely honest with her. This becomes another push to let go of her husband, and Becky takes the ring off her finger, attaching it to a chain. During the day, the girls realize that a whole day has passed since they threw the phone, meaning the trick didn't work. Throwing the second phone is too risky. Dehydrated and weakening with each passing hour, Hunter plans to descend to the satellite dishes to retrieve the backpack. Since the rope is too short, she detaches and jumps onto the dish, risking her life. There is no ladder below, so the only way back is up the rope, which is out of reach. Using a selfie stick, Hunter hooks the backpack onto the rope and then jumps to its straps. Hunter climbs up, but at the last moment, she slips and falls like a stone. Becky's heart stops, but soon she is relieved to see that Hunter managed to catch on. The girl cannot climb up, and Becky has to use the remaining strength to save her friend. Becky quenches her thirst and writes messages on paper to send with the drone to the motel. Unfortunately, its battery is depleted, and they have to bring it back to avoid it falling in the middle of the desert. At night, Becky dreams that her friend is not with her, and she is attacked by hungry vultures. She slowly turns her head and sees one of the birds gnawing at Hunter's bloodied body. Becky wakes up, and her friend, in her characteristic manner, cheers her up. The next morning, Becky figures out how to charge the drone using a light bulb at the top of the tower. To do this, she climbs the pole with her last strength, but the curtains and plugs are too short to reach the contacts in the socket. To solve this problem, she inserts her gold ring into the socket, and it works. Then drag impossibly long minutes until the drone is fully charged. At this time, vultures, sensing the wound on Becky's leg, hesitate to attack her. Because of this, she drops the backpack down, but manages to save the drone. When the last section turns green, the girl slips onto the platform. She feels nauseous from the strain and stress. In a couple of hours, people at the hotel will wake up, and they can launch the drone. Becky is almost shutting down, thinking about her father. Falling asleep is too dangerous, and Hunter helps by distracting her friend with conversation. It's time to send the drone, and Becky directs it forward. But when it reaches the highway, a passing truck knocks it down. The driver comes out of the cabin but doesn't notice the device on the ground. Becky loses all hope of rescue. Vultures circle around the girls, and on the horizon, heavy clouds appear. Becky says they won't survive another night, and Hunter supports her as best she can. The girls haven't eaten anything for a long time, and their strength is running out. The only option is to drop the last phone and hope that the messages will reach the recipient. For this, Becky asks Hunter for her second sneaker, but her friend replies that she can't give it. Becky doesn't understand, as Hunter didn't take it off all this time. Becky couldn't cope with the horrible truth and saw her friend in hallucinations. When Hunter fell, she didn't land on the backpack but hit the satellite dish and bled. Vultures feed on her body. Becky is devastated. Soon, a storm comes, during which the girl records a farewell message to her father. James has been trying to call his daughter all this time, thinking she's just ignoring him. In the morning, a vulture sits next to Becky's body and starts pecking at her wound, but the seemingly lifeless girl lures the bird. She grabs the scavenger by the neck and smashes its head against the platform. Becky replenishes her strength with its meat and makes one last attempt to survive. She repeats Hunter's maneuver and jumps onto the satellite dish. Sitting next to her friend's body, she scares away the vulture, surviving stronger. She writes to her father about her situation and hides her phone inside Hunter's wound. She apologizes to her friend and drops her body down, and the message could have reached the recipient. The girls remain sitting on the windy, swaying dish. Her plan works, and soon James rushes to the tower. He arrives where he sees rescuers bagging bodies. Horror envelops the man, but Becky is already running into his arms.